welcome back to an even more off the cuff Grimm Reader update. I am Kathy Grimm, the Grimm Reader on my channel. And it's Tuesday, not Sunday, and I'm very busy and I need to be doing some other things rather than this, but I'm still doing this because I want to. And I'm going to give you an update on everything. So yeah, I'm just really busy right now. The travel is kind of even more heading towards me, and we have one more week before Thanksgiving break, and I have basically almost the whole week off next week. I have some classes on Monday still, and then of course that's what I do is on Tuesday I have to go to the dentist, and I'm going to get a flu and a COVID vaccine, which means that'll put it out of commission for most of Wednesday, I think, next week, because of feeling under the weather. And I still will have stuff to do. I still have a kind of a list of things I need to get done, including grading, but I'll just have to take it easy if I'm not feeling well. And then of course Thanksgiving and the rest of the week, just catching up. I have a number of sort of things I want to get done, including kind of pre-packing, just so I'm not as frazzled with it when in December. Today was interesting because the nice fellow who's going to look after our cats came by and had a first kind of look at the whole situation. He'll be in charge of the kitties from when Bill comes over on the 21st through New Year's Eve, and we have our 4 cats, and we have our neighbor who's going to come in as well, so they'll be looked in on twice by this guy and then my neighbor. But it's still sort of, we haven't left them since 2020, since the January 2020. We went on a very short trip, and I did make videos back then, but I'm not sure if they're still up on my channel. I did weekly updates. I'm not sure if they might be gone, but maybe they're still there. No, I don't think they are. I think my first ones that I kept of my videos start in the end of that year, 2020, or maybe even 2021. It doesn't matter. Point being, we haven't been away from our cats for a very long time, and that trip was very short. It was only a couple of days. It'll all be fine. What can you do? It's actually pretty rare that both of us travel at the same time. Usually Bill stays home and I travel. But we wanted to get him over there for my relatives would like to see him again, and it's just nice for us to be together with them over there. So it's all good. Regarding my reading, it's been sort of eclectic and all over the place because I'm so busy. I haven't really been able to settle as much as I would like, but in general, this is still going really well. Although, I mean, it's going because I'm still doing it. I did sort of, I'm a little bit more impatient with this long saga of the Forsytes than I am with other long works. Like comparing it just because he's the most recent. Trollope, I never really felt sort of like, like impatient, or even just, sometimes I feel with Forsyte Saga, I don't want to listen to the book right now, even though it's my listen. I really only ever listen to one book at a time. I don't have multiple Audible books because for some reason I just don't want to do that. But sometimes I'm not quite in the mood for this. It is sort of, there's an unrelenting aspect to it because it keeps going and going, and we're moving through the generations. Now I'm in the final book, so it's the 3rd generation mainly that's being focused on, and it's still good, but it's lost a little bit of its charm, and I'm not sure if it's just me or the writing that has lost its wonderfulness. It's still very good, but because it's really just basically following these people through, I think it's lags or drags a little bit at some points as we're going along in a way that I'm thinking Buddenbrooks didn't, which, it's been a long time since I read Buddenbrooks. And sometimes it reminds me a little bit of another book that I really just listened to, which is the Anthony Powell's the 4 books about English life. What's it called? Dance to the Music of Time, I think. Which I did like, and I really enjoyed that. But it also it was so episodic. It's more episodic than this one in a way. it would just sort of meander along and you could just kind of go with it. And there's some similarities there, just in terms of, because it's a generational saga type thing. It's still very good. Let me see, there was something, so one of the main characters is this fellow called Soames, who's really completely unlikable, but he's an interesting character study because he is sort of a portrayal of an art connoisseur who collects paintings and art, is fascinated by art and by beauty, and is also kind of greedy and possessive about, he wants to own these paintings, and then in connection to that, the first wife with who never loved him. And so it's sort of, and right now in the last section, it's turned into this whole thing of him being, because he's a connoisseur and he's also a businessman and interested in the money side of things, he's almost like compromising his what he actually likes, because he's thinking more in terms of the market value of what he's looking at. And this is of course a time period, it starts in the sort of before the beginning of turn of the 18th to the 19th century, and then it kind of goes in further into sort of, so we're experiencing in terms of the art world various waves of modern art, and we see him sort of struggling to keep up a little bit in terms of realizing that some of this stuff he doesn't really like is going to be considered valuable. And it's not like he's not a very deep character. He's really is kind of just not very likable. He's not sort of warm or kind or anything of that nature. Which is why he's sort of a little bit tedious in a way, to have a sort of unrelentingly self-serving and limited character be in the foreground so much. I mean, he's still fairly interesting just because of the way he's depicted, but there's limits to how fascinating I find Soames because of his, but this aspect of him being someone who wants to own and covet and hoard beautiful art, and really kind of gets a weird pleasure. I was just reading, because I'm always on the internets and I fall down all kinds of weird rabbit holes, something called Stendhal syndrome, which he doesn't really have, but apparently Stendhal syndrome is related to Stendhal, the writer, and it has to do with having such a strong reaction to a beautiful painting that you get sick from it. You get sick from the overwhelming sort of hormonal interactions in your body when you're perceiving beautiful art. I didn't go beyond that, but it kind of, Soames has a little tiny bit of this. He's very, very interested in beautiful art or beautiful paintings. And you sort of, there's these scenes where he's sort of looking at paintings. Anyway, that's going quite well, even though I have fallen a little bit out of love with it. I probably still is 5 stars because it is, you know, it has this epic sweep of things. It's almost like I need a different kind of rating system because, well, or maybe I just should not be so generous with my stars and just give it 4 stars. We'll have to see how it ends up. But yeah, I'm definitely going to finish it. It's still really good. That's that. And then, so yes, I sort of started a couple of the books that Peruse Project was reading, but it's almost as if because I'm so busy, I don't have time to indulge in things that I quickly see as not being that great, even though they might be comforting. And so I've kind of gotten rid of all of the things I was looking at there, and I won't even mention the names. It wasn't really worth it in terms of how much I read of them. And then I am still committed to reading this, and I've made it a little ways in. It's very strange. It's very interesting. We get a kind of inside-outside picture of Marie de France, who's in this very impoverished abbey in England with these other poor nuns, and she's decided to sort of come into her own and change things a little bit. And she's also started writing her lays, her songs to still Eleanor, the Queen of France. And when I have time, I would like to do more research on my own on her as a historical figure and see how she's being portrayed here. And I know that Austin Kleon, this person I follow, whose Substack I follow, he posted, he loved this novel, and he posted a link to a talk that she gave at Notre Dame, Lauren Groff, and she connected with a professor there who's done research on Marie de France, I think Marie de France. So the writing is strong. it is sort of this visceral, unromanticized view of medieval times and these poor women in the abbey. And it's sort of, because it's so, it is from the inside of her perception, there's a sort of surreal quality to everything. And it's very sort of close to visceral descriptions of things connected to what she sees, her body, and just her view of everything, the way she'll perceive something, and then it's described in a very kind of microscopic way, because we're holding in on one person's way of seeing things. And so that means that sometimes you have to piece what's going on actually together a little bit. And I'm really still not very far. I have not had the as we say in German, the Muße to really connect deeply with it, because of just, that's the thing when I'm busy, as I get less able to concentrate on my reads. Sometimes I like them if they're escapist enough, but sometimes I just find myself being too frazzled and doing other things, getting distracted by internets. And it's something I am sort of vaguely thinking about establishing a sort of a list, basically a TBR for next year. There are people I want to get to, and I find because I don't do that, it's almost too much, like too moody and too sort of unsystematic. And on the one hand, I like that because it is not supposed to be work or anything for me. It's just what I want to do. On the other hand, I do feel like I'm losing out on, if I could just sort of harness my brain a little bit better in its downtime to focus on, I think I would enjoy that. But it's an ongoing thing. I am very busy and I get tired. My health is actually pretty good. I don't feel as much as the fatigue as I have in the past, although it's borderline. It's still not great, but I'm doing quite well. And I think part of it is being excited for the trip and all that stuff. The anxiety has subsided a little bit, and now it's just looking forward to it. So that's that. Let me think. Somebody talked to a little bit about the stuff. So what happened was, for some reason, I don't quite remember if anything specifically precipitated my desire to read a book that I should have read a long time ago, which is Clarice Lispector's The Passion According to G.H. And so, and actually we did own a copy of it, but I couldn't find it. So I basically just, for some reason, I decided to download it on the Kindle, because I'm still trying to read things on my Kindle. And I started it, and it is very strange. Anyone who's read it knows how weird of a book it is. And you know, I know the basics of, there's something to do with the cockroach that she does in the end. And so anything to do with a cockroach that is canonical fiction, you cannot help but think of connections to the Kafka story, the Metamorphosis, which I've read, you know, a couple of times. I've taught it before a couple of times, but a long time ago. I need to reconnect with Kafka too. And so what happened was I started reading it, and then I sort of thought, it kind of reminded me of how I felt when I started reading Thomas Bernhard. Like, I just had the sense that with Lispector, it would help to know more about, also Borges, the same thing, like to sort of take my time to figure out what I'm dealing with here. Borges took me a while to figure out what he was doing with the first set of stories that I read, and I did get very far with his more experimental things, but it took me a while of figuring out and basically doing research on, okay, this is what he was about, this is where he's coming from. And same with Bernhard, like with Bernhard, who I've sort of put aside, but I will come back to, because there is a sort of unrelenting sadness to all of Bernhard's stuff. Sometimes it draws me in, but sometimes I'm kind of repelled by it. You know, his illness and the fact that he was such a downer of a person in terms of his views of everything, for reasons that made a lot of sense when you read his biography. And in a way, it's sort of the opposite of my graduate training, go away from biography, but with some writers, it's almost like you need to know their biography to be able to figure out what you're dealing with. And so what happened with Lispector is, I recalled how way back in the day when I was in graduate school, she was one of the main authors for The Woman Who I TA for, which was this famous writer and theorist who's still with us. She's in her 80s, and that's the French feminist theorist, but also philosopher, and basically a writer, a creative writer, who's written over 80 books, Hélène Cixous, insert picture here. And that was, you know, a pivotal experience of my career and just interacting with her. And of course, back then, I really had not read her stuff. I have, to be honest, not read a lot of Sixu. I've sort of dipped into things, but I did have the class with her, and I had to sort of, what the TAs did were, we looked after her a little bit and would copy things for her. And I remember kind of bringing a chair in for her to sit on, a stool. She was so sweet, and so she had a real presence. And whenever she gave talks, such a sort of interesting, unforgettable presence, and obviously a great mind who none of the students really knew much about, either these undergraduates, even though they're Northwestern undergraduates, and they were, you know, a smart bunch of young people. But I'll never forget how one of them asked her to tell them about Derrida. And I'm like, come on, guys, you know, this is Sixu. She's a famous person in her own right. Don't keep asking her to tell you about this other famous person who she has written about and had a connection with. They were both born in Algeria and the Jewish thing. So her background is really interesting too. And I gather that in the meantime, she has written something about Derrida. And he did come to one of the events at Northwestern, and I did get to shake his hand. But that's about it. That's about my connection to Derrida. But I did kind of interact quite, for a little while at least, with Sixu back in the day. This is a long time ago. And so that kind of, I sort of went down a Sixu rabbit hole, and I felt like I should read, like, the two books that I have from her that she signed for me are this one called The 3 Steps on a Ladder of Writing, and I think she actually talks about Kafka in this one. I have dipped into it and read little bits and pieces of it, but I find her prose sort of, it takes a lot of time and energy out of me to read it. Her lectures, and I'll make sure to post to at least a short one, are, you kind of get a sense of her presence. And what I'm most interested in her, to be honest, right now, are her memoirs about her parents. Because sort of, how do you kind of draw on your upbringing and your background and your parents in a way that's not sort of pulling you back and not pushing you forward in life, is something that I'm dealing with right now. I'm just opening up to one of the first pages, and she mentions Bernhard and Lispector, among other people. You have this canon of famous people that are connected to your lives, and that's what I posted on the community tab. This strange oblique little inscription that she wrote here about, it is always we one way, meaning it is always us or okay. Don't ask if it is okay. It always we one way. I think she's having fun with me. And then this other book, which I have to admit, I have not read this one either. This is called Mana for the Mandelstams, for the Mandelas. So she's kind of interweaving. She's done so much. She's written plays, she's written books. She's kind of connecting with what's going on in her world at certain times. And this one, I have to see if it has an introduction. And then when does the actual text start? Face of Abandon. They're not easy works to get through, but they're wonderful. And she's very, very sort of, she's a writer, I would say, even if she has these sort of theoretical stances. And in this one, she has a more straightforward inscription. It just says, "For Kathy, who has helped me with smiles and readiness." Because that's what I tried to do. I tried to help her and sit there in the front and be ready to help her. And very, very sweet. That's all I ever got. I was so sort of, I wasn't the best at being a grad student and getting ahead and being networky and getting a letter of recommendation from Sixu, or, you know, some kind of more official documentation of my connection to her, which does, in retrospect, is fine. It's just, it didn't even, I don't even know why it didn't occur to me. It's not how I function. I'm not really good at that kind of stuff. Never have been. And I'm sure I never will be either. And there's almost no need to be, because I'm like at the end. I was always bad at that. And sometimes people would point out to me how bad I am at that, including the people who were sort of in charge of me. And I never got better at it. And it was almost like a rebellion against things that you're supposed to be good at that you don't want to be good at, so you're not good at them. So it's like self-fulfilling stuff going on there. Anyway, I will stop here. So yes, I fell down a Sisu rabbit hole and then connected to that as well, Lispector and then Sisu. And I know that this podcast that I also don't have time to really listen to, David, what is his name? Naaman, the Between the Covers. He interviewed her, I think. She has there's one episode on her. And that's the whole sort of, we're getting back to Ursula Le Guin and even my mother's stuff and being the daughter of a writer, albeit a not very successful one, but a very good one. The whole kind of like dealing with all of that stuff, it's like, it's there, but it's all in good time. And I know that there's a biography of Lispector that I want to read too by Benjamin Moser. I'm looking at the website right now, Why This World. But I think I even today I read a little bit of the Passion, and it has a kind of, because it's so, there's no plot. It really is just this woman experiencing something that it's not even exactly clear in the beginning what she's experiencing, and it's a very abstract language. But there is something weirdly soothing about it. Oh, yes, and even the Passion stuff is kind of interesting because in a weird way it connects back to writing about Marie de France. And I know that I'm interested in the book called Hild, about Hildegard. So these sort of retellings of these brilliant women. I'm sort of inspired and I'm surrounded by the works of brilliant women. Maybe that's where I should end it for today. I'm sorry, these are very off-the-cuff thoughts, but that's where I'm at this week, and I'm just glad I got something up. And yeah, so this will be for what should have been on Sunday. And hopefully I'll have a chance to come back to you on Sunday, or we'll see. But yeah, I hope that I get a little bit more reading done. I don't really mind if I haven't finished anything, as long as I have a sort of better grasp on what I want to say. I'm okay with that. And maybe I'm pretty, the foresight should be done pretty soon. We'll see. And thank you all for watching and subscribing and ask me questions. And I hope to also get back to watching more YouTube at some point, BookTube. And I will see you soon. Bye.